Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and in this video we're just going to quickly look at domain and range of inverse functions. Okay, so just a brief reminder, if I were to take the inverse of, let's say, this data set here, well, the inverse, I'm switching the x with the y, so this would now be 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5. So if I were to look at the domain for the first one, well, the domain for the first one was 1, 3, 5. And the range was 2, 4, 6. Remember, always in order from lowest to greatest. Now in my second one, my domain would be 2, 4, 6. And the range is 1, 3, 5. Now, as you'll notice here, the domain that was in the first one is now my range, whereas the range is now my domain. So whenever you take the inverse, your domain and range switch places. So I'm going to show you how you'd apply this into another equation. Now an actual question here. Okay, so let's take a look at this question here. Given this function, first and foremost, obviously, we have to take the inverse of this function. Now, to take the inverse of this function, just like we did in the last video, you want to complete the square first. So to complete the square, you want to group up your x squared with your 4x. I have the 1. Now, I don't have to factor out anything here because there's nothing beside my x squared, just like how I like it. So your next step for completing the square, divide by 2 and square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4. So add 4, subtract 4. Okay? This one. Remove the minus 4. There's nothing really to multiply by it, so it just goes out. This is now a perfect square, so I can write this as x minus 2. And this is now minus 3. So we are now in vertex form. Now you want to switch your x with your y. So x is equal to y minus 2 squared minus 3. And you want to isolate your y, so you want to get it by itself, add 3 to both sides, square root, so it's going to be plus or minus, and add 2 to both sides, so plus or minus, square root, x plus 3 plus 2. And this is my inverse. Now, originally, my original domain and range for this function, what's my original domain and range? Well, my original domain would be, well, x is everything. X can be everything. There's no restriction. As for my range, on the other hand, remember, the range is always going to be, well, in this case, bigger than minus 3, because my a value is positive. So you know that it is facing upwards. So because it's facing upwards, you know that your y has to be greater than or equal to negative 3. For the inverse, on the other hand, they both have to switch. Domain has to be now such that x, where x has to be greater than or equal to negative 3. And my range, well, now my range has to be everything. So let's test this out here. Now, when we're testing this out, does this work? Well, quite definitely, if I look at this equation, x has to definitely be greater than or equal to negative 3. Because if it was smaller, you'd have a negative underneath there, and you can't take the square root of a negative number. So, this works. Of course, though, if you want to make this into a function, because right now it is not a function, so to make it into a function, you have to pick one part of your parabola, just like we did in the previous video. So if I want to pick one part of my parabola, so restricting the domain, you can pick either the left side or the right side. I'm going to try with the right side here. No, let's go with the left side here. So if I'm going to go with the left side, then you're going to be looking at x is less than or equal to 2. Because, you know, it's coming from here. So you know my vertex was 2, negative 3. So you know my axis of symmetry is at x is equal to 2. So it's either going to be greater than or equal to 2 or less than or equal to 2. So x is either going to be greater than or equal to 2 or less than or equal to 2. If it's greater than or equal to 2, it coincides with the plus. So plus square root x plus 3 plus 2 coincides with the x being greater than or equal to 2. And if I used the minus, it coincides with the less than or equal to 2. Okay? So, in this case here, if you're restricting the domain, you want to go with x is less than 2, or the other one, and then reevaluate your domain. And that's it. Hope you understood, and have yourself a good day.